In this video, I'm going to break down for you exactly how to stop overthinking and get back to dominating on the court. So if you're a basketball player who struggles with constantly overthinking, hesitating, never putting into play what you've been working on in your training or in your practicing for the last week, for the last months even, this video is for you. So stick around. I'm going to break down for you how to stop overthinking and how to get back to playing at your peak when it matters most. So if you're new to the channel, you've come here from Instagram or maybe you were referred here from someone else and you're wondering, well, who is this guy? What does he know about peak performance? My name is Joslin Green. I've been a performance coach for 15 plus years. I've worked with hundreds of athletes from high school all the way up to the professional level on really helping to dial in their performance so they can perform their best when it matters most. Over the last 20 plus years, I've had the honor and privilege of working with hundreds and hundreds of athletes across dozens of athletic programs, colleges and universities, pro teams, pro events. And it started with myself being a coach and then developing a curriculum and a presentation that I could work with teams and full athletic programs over the course of the season to help them refine their approach to performance and do individualized plans for each of their athletes as well. So over the course of, I would say the first 15 years of my practice as a performance coach, it was working with all sorts of different teams and different sports. So football, baseball, basketball, volleyball. And as time went on and I got a lot of experience kind of doing live presentations and speaking and doing these season-long workshops, really developed a passion for working one-on-one with the athletes and with smaller teams, with smaller groups, and just seeing those athletes develop a plan that they could build on for an entire season and just watch that transformation. When you're working with larger athletic programs, you don't really have that much of a hands-on experience with the athletes themselves. So I developed my curriculum and boiled it down into the breakthrough program. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But here are just some testimonials of some of the athletes that I got a chance to work with over the last several years. So Rebecca was a volleyball player. She was looking to make a fairly high-level club team, and she had some college offers on the table as well. Really struggled with emotional control on the court. Couldn't bounce back from mistakes very well. So we worked through our program. She had some great success and was able to not only make that club team, but also have her choice of colleges that were reaching out to her for recruitment offers. Hasim was a basketball player. We connected through one of our workshops and then ended up doing some continual work with him and some other high school athletes as well, elite level athletes as well. He also experienced some great success and was able to make his elite level team and then again go on to some college experiences. Mike is the founder of the Win Basketball Club, where I used to live in Calgary actually, and so worked with a number of his athletes and some presentations on his team extensively, and great experience working with those boys. And I'd say 50% of the players that we worked with on his team have now gone on to play at post-secondary and college or university. One of them just recently making it to the CIS championship game, and he was a CIS player of the year this past year. And then Wendy, who's a parent, sat in on one of our performance coaching sessions. And it's always great to hear from parents. They're usually the ones paying the bills for their athletes to do this performance work, and kind of hearing from them, seeing the impact it's having on their athletes, and them also getting an understanding of what goes into this and the difference it can really make. Really doing this is because I was where you were, right? I was that uber hesitant athlete, that athlete that did not believe in themselves, that athlete that was constantly overthinking and would train all the time, more than most of the guys that I played with, yet I still had trouble translating it onto the court. And this was well before YouTube. This was, well before trainers and all of the benefits that a lot of the athletes now have access to. This was at a time when there was none of that. And I was trying to figure out how to become the best player that I could be. And I loved basketball. So I grew up in a small town in northern Canada, as far north as you can go, where there's actually still civilization and towns, a place called Yellowknife. Now, Yellowknife was a small town, maybe 16, 17,000 people. You know what, I don't even know if it was that size when I grew up. But as you can imagine, in a small town in northern Canada, we didn't have a lot of the amenities that a big city might have. So I remember growing up in junior high, there was kind of one main outdoor basketball court that I would go to with all of my buddies, all of my friends, and we would play there all throughout the summer. As you can imagine, it's the Arctic in Canada. So there was a very small window of time when you could play outdoors, really maybe 2 or 3 months out of the year, 3 or 4 months out of the year. And then the rest of the time, you had to be finding time to play inside. So in high school, I would, as a part of my part-time job, I would put some of that money aside and I would literally rent gym time with some buddies. So we would kind of pool our cash. We would go to the city of Yellowknife and we would book gyms like elementary school gyms or junior high school gyms where we could play in the evening times. And that was how I developed my skills kind of from the large part of the year on my own. But I was also privileged enough to have taken part in this a club basketball. Might be club basketball now is how you would think about it. But at the time, there was a coach who had just moved up there, had a ton of basketball experience, played for part of the national program, played at the University of Victoria, won national championships, and he was a phenomenal player. So Quinn was his name, this coach. He started a program that was sponsored by Pepsi-Cola up there of a bunch of kids, and we would just play and practice a couple times a week, and we would play in a men's league. So as you can imagine, small town, there was 2 high schools, not a lot of competition. So we had to play against grown men growing up, and it was great. It really helped, refine our competition, refine our competitive skills, and a lot of the players from that team ended up going to college. But I was one of the smaller guys. Small, scrawny, maybe $120 soaking wet as a high school athlete, but loved basketball, fell in love with it from a young age, and I was like, I want to try to play college as well. So I would practice with this team, I would rent gym space and practice with my friends, and I was always just kind of laser focused on playing college basketball. And when I got there, miraculously, I did make it there at a small college in a little town in northern Alberta, and made the college basketball team after putting in tons of work, doing some workouts, actually putting on some weight, made the team. And when I made that team, I was so intimidated at first that I actually declined the offer, if you can believe that. Coach came to me, so went to the tryouts, did okay at the tryouts, but felt like I wasn't really gonna make it, didn't really stack up, because again, I didn't perform up to snuff. And tryouts came and went, and he came and talked to me. He's like, hey, you're kind of on the cusp, but we've had some injuries, or some player had left or whatever, wasn't returning. So we actually have a spot on the team for you. And I declined. I didn't want to play on the team in that year. Turned out to be an okay decision because I ended up making some great relationships and some great friends the following year, and then ended up playing after that fact. But was so non-believing in my own skills that I willfully did not play for a college team in my first year because I didn't feel like I could do it. And I know that year kind of set me back skill-wise for sure, but I also think that I didn't kind of fully recover from that experience mentally because I put myself behind the 8 ball and I didn't believe in myself enough. I overthought everything that I was doing on the floor and didn't think that I could compete. And so fast forward, 20, 30 years later, and I'm now coaching kids on teams and doing performance coaching individually with one-on-one athletes and with group kids, in group settings, and being able to communicate to these kids that we can help you Get rid of that overthinking. That doesn't have to be your lot in life as a player. Now, in order to help you really stop overthinking and play with freedom on the court, you need to understand what are these 4 cores of peak performance. Then we'll drill into the specifics tactic for each core that you'll have to master in order to stop overthinking and really dominate next time you get on the floor. Okay, so the first thing is, what are these 4 cores? Like, what does this look like? They're not really 4 interlocking circles. Think of them as 4 circles that go from largest to smallest. So, you know those Russian dolls, the nested dolls that one goes into the other, and then you can kind of take them apart and you finally get to the innermost doll. That's how these cores work. There is a larger outer circle, and then as you go deeper towards the core, you start to have more and more impact beyond just your sport. But let's start with the biggest core. And the first one, the most important one, the one with the largest impact, is the physical core. That's the outer circle. That's where most athletes spend most of their time developing. And for good reason, right? It's the one that manifests itself the most on the court, right? And it includes 3 major areas of focus. We've got your skill set, we've got your athleticism, and then we've got what I like to refer to as repair and maintenance. So think about your fuel, your nutrition, your rest and recovery. In the Breakthrough Coaching Program, we go into a lot more detail about how to build out your own performance design system with each of these cores in mind, and physical kind of being the most important one. So we integrate it into what you're already currently doing from a skill development and athleticism standpoint, or we help develop that for you. But the thing to remember here is that you need to understand that by and large, this is the biggest external driver of your performance, at least in the beginning, right? So it's no coincidence that when you first start playing basketball, or any sport really, the biggest, the strongest, the fastest kid typically dominates for several years. And then as you age and as you improve and your skills get better and the competition improves, your skills start to outweigh your athleticism, right? So guys with a lot of skill, girls with a lot of skill can perform a whole lot better than the kid who might be bigger, stronger, and faster. And then things develop even further, and you combine skill and athleticism, and those players can really dominate for a long period of time. And then you add in a well-fueled body, one that is resistant to injury, one that is able to have, the best endurance and the best nutrition. Those athletes tend to dominate for a long period of time. Okay, so that's the outer physical core. And again, biggest surfaced area, the one that has the largest initial impact, which is why it's the one that athletes spend, I would say, 80% of their time, 90% of their time focusing on. But here's where we separate the men from the boys, as it were, the women from the girls, is drilling one core deeper, and that's the mental core. So this is where most of our pro athletes come to us. This is our wheelhouse. Elite level college and high school athletes come to us for help specifically on mental performance. And then they benefit from all of the other aspects of our breakthrough program. But this is the one that starts to move the needle when you're no longer able to dominate purely on physical skill and athleticism anymore. And the playing field becomes a whole lot more level. And the pool of successful and elite athletes is a whole lot smaller. So now what's the differentiator, right? You get to a point where, everybody can jump out of the gym. Everyone is a super fast, twitchy athlete. Everyone's got great skill. So now what starts to separate you? This is the mental core. Okay. And as we drill down into the mental core, athletes can really start to tip the scales in their favor and reach a whole new level of performance just simply by focusing on and developing their mental performance. Okay, so 3 areas of focus here are your emotional control, your ability to manage your emotions. This is where we start, and I'll explain why in a second here. So the emotional control is kind of the critical piece. And then we move into mindset. So that's our thoughts, right? I like to use a biblical reference here. There's a great Bible verse that talks about taking thoughts captive. And that's really the key here in terms of mindset, is learning how to control our thoughts. So a performance mindset includes all the things we generally associate with mental performance, right? So confidence, focus, resilience, being able to bounce back from mistakes. All of those things are keys to developing a performance mindset. But I'll come back to emotions for a second here. And the reason why we start with emotional control is that emotions come first. They're foundational, and contrary to a very popular self-coaching model, which is known as CTFAR, circumstances, which leads to thoughts, which produce feelings, which generate actions, which ultimately generate results. So for the most part, that seems pretty logical. The reason this falls apart, though, is that when you go deeper and you study actual science and brain chemistry, the reality is that circumstances trigger emotions first. Emotions are processed in the amygdala at a much faster rate than we're able to form conscious or even subconscious thoughts. So there's studies that show that the amygdala can respond to stimuli, like fearful stimuli, for example. If you see a scary picture or a picture of a scary face, it can respond to the stimuli in as quickly as 100 to 200 milliseconds after the exposure to that stimulus. Crazy fast, right? So our ability to regulate our emotions is the foundation. It's critical, right? Without this ability to regulate emotions, we're going to have an impossible time trying to design our mindset, because we're literally reacting to emotions in hundredths of a millisecond. So we start with that emotional control, then we build on the performance mindset. And then the last piece is decision making. In its simplest terms, the best players make good decisions more often than bad ones. There's a reason why some players who might not be physical specimens are able to get more minutes, become leaders on their teams, become extensions of their coaches on the floor. It's because they make the right decisions more often than not, and the coach trusts them completely. We've got our physical core. We move a little bit deeper into the mental core, and we start with talking about trust, right? I was just talking about how coaches trust these players with their decision making. Now we move into the relational core, and trust is a key component of this one. So this relational core is an area that isn't thought about very often, but it can have a major impact on your performance. And if you think about, you're playing a team sport, right? I'm targeting basketball players. If you're coming here from another sport, that's great, but most of my audience is basketball players. So you are playing a team sport, and you're not doing any of the things that you're doing on your own, right? You're working with coaches, you're working with trainers, scouts, teammates, family members, agents, potentially, if you're at the professional level. And if you're at the pro level, it's not just agents. There's a whole entourage of people in terms of your management, brand deals, sponsorship. There's a ton of people that now come into your circle that you need to learn how to communicate with. And the biggest mistake is oftentimes just designating someone else in your circle to do all the communication for you. That is a recipe for not achieving the things that you want to achieve, because you're offloading one of the critical cores in terms of your relational development to somebody else. So understanding how to manage and leverage your relationships is absolutely critical and essential to having you reach the level that you want to get to. There's 3 areas of focus here that we like to drill down into. So there's communication. This, as you've probably heard, is the foundation of great relationships. We spend a lot of time in the Breakthrough program mastering communication skills. But for now, it's not an exaggeration to say that your communication skills can often be the difference maker to take you from role player to playmaker, right? So if you know how to communicate with coaching staff and teammates, that can immediately propel you, regardless of your skill set, into earning more playing time. But it can also sabotage your performance entirely if you are a poor communicator and you don't know how to communicate effectively with coaches, teammates, team staff, other people in your circle. So then we drill into trust, right? So there's communication and then trust. And one of the major reasons for building communication is to establish trust in your circles. If communication is the currency for great relationships, think of trust as the actual investment fund, right? Like that's what you're depositing into. That's what you're building. The more you can deposit into that trust fund, and the bigger it gets, the more freedom and opportunity that you're going to start to earn over time. But it takes time and consistency to build a solid trust fund. Finally, we get to leadership. So whether you're just leading yourself or ideally leading other people, the goal here is that the big payoff for your trust fund and the trust that you're building through your communication skills is that ultimately you're going to become a leader to the people around you, right? And if you build on this analogy of a trust fund even further, a trust fund exists for someone else's benefit, right? So if you think about how a trust fund works, there's someone who's putting aside assets and resources and it's being held in trust to eventually be disseminated, distributed, provided to another beneficiary, right? That's really what the best athletes do, is they use their communication skills. They use the assets that they built up in terms of their skill set, their mindset, their talents. They are building trust so that they can eventually lead a team of other people, whether that is on the court and eventually off the court. So, some of your favorite athletes have built brands and built businesses based on the fact that they are now leaders in a domain completely outside of athletics. And that's a great segue to the innermost core, which leads to the most important changes, the most significant changes in the long run. And that's the spiritual core. Okay, so this is what fuels everything when your life and circumstances change, and they eventually do. They always do. Right. So let's face it, like if your playing days are going to end at some point, you're probably here to maximize those playing days, and you're here to learn more about how you can improve on the problem areas that are stopping you from reaching your goals. But if you think about it, even if you were literally the 1 in a billion athlete, like a LeBron James or a Cristiano Ronaldo, Alex Ovechkin, let's say you can play at a high level into your 40s, right? Into your early 40s. That's still only half your life, right? Is that what your life is truly about? Is just being an athlete? For the 99.9% of us that will never play competitively into our 40s and have that level of impact, you might be playing into your mid-20s, perhaps. Then what, right? You've invested a good chunk of time and effort and money in some cases. And for what? What does it all mean when your playing days are over? This is why the spiritual core is really at the center and really provides the most leverage to take your skill set, your mindset, your leadership skills, all the things that you've developed in the other cores, and channel them into anything that you want to do beyond sport. Your career, your business, your family, all of the things that will leave a legacy long after you're done playing and will impact the world around you in a dramatic way, right? So if you're watching this video specifically, you're here because you want to stop overthinking. So this core is critical because at least one of these 3 things that I'm going to mention next need to change in order for you to get your focus back and stop overthinking. And typically, the one with the biggest leverage is this first one. It's identity, right? So for a lot of athletes, I would say most of the athletes that we work with, because of the level of achievement that they've reached, their identity is tied to that at our core, right? It's tied to their athleticism. It's tied to being a basketball player. So that's how people know you, right? And that's why you're here. You're here because people know you as an athlete and you want to maximize your impact as an athlete. But in order to stop overthinking and play with freedom, you need to separate your identity from what you do and determine who you are. So for me, it's my faith, right? So my identity is tied back to being a Christ follower. And that's kind of the North Star for my life. And for a lot of athletes, they have a very similar identity. And it allows them to play with freedom and passion because the outcome of the game doesn't impact who they are as a person. Therefore, there's a whole lot less pressure on what they do on the basketball court and how they achieve on the basketball court. And then that allows them to just play freely, right? So typically, just a tweak in identity and just being able to shift your identity away from being a basketball player can be enough to help you stop overthinking and just go out there and perform. So what is it for you? If it's not faith, what is it for you? Where does your identity come from? Then we look at your beliefs. So your belief system affects everything. Your beliefs not only help shape your identity, they determine how you train, right? Who are you going to listen to? Who's telling you to work out this way or to eat these foods, right? Your belief systems shape and impact your training. They impact what you think, so your mental performance, and they impact your community, right? The people that you associate with usually typically have the similar beliefs as you, right? So your beliefs are critical in terms of shaping these outer cores. And then we talk about vision, right? So when you start to align your beliefs and identity, you can create a vision for the player and the person that you want to be. So short-term and long-term goals are nice, but they can be really strict, sometimes too rigid, and they're not adaptable enough when circumstances change. But your vision is a much bigger picture, and it encompasses the changes that come with life, but they're centered on your identity and your beliefs. Okay, so now we have an overview of our 4 cores. We've talked about physical, mental, relational, and spiritual. Now we can look at a specific tactic within each of these cores that you can take away right after this video, apply immediately to help you stop overthinking and dominate on the floor. Great. Now you've got a solid understanding of the 4 cores of peak performance and how they work together. Let's dive in and identify a specific tactic. I'm going to give you an exercise within each of these cores that you can do to help you stop overthinking and start dominating on the floor. As always, we start with the outer core, which is physical. And this one would solve a lot of problems for most athletes, but it's something that surprisingly not very many have nailed down, which is a pregame routine. If you can identify a solid pregame routine that is unique to yourself, it's going to be grounding, and it's going to help you create automatic behaviors that'll give you some comfort and clarity going into the game. Already, your mind will be centered and focused because you'll have gone through a centering routine that'll give you some sense of focus and clarity. So this video here is Donovan Mitchell. This video is on our Instagram page. You can check it out. He goes through his pregame routine in detail, almost down to the minute. And you'd be amazed at the level of discipline that pros take to their pregame routine, but it shows, right? I mean, it shows because they're able to perform consistently. And this is a key piece to being able to perform consistently and focus consistently every single game. So that first piece is that pregame routine. Next, we're going to dive into the mental core, and we're going to do an exercise called anchoring your attention. Now this one works by having a physical cue, some type of object, whether it's a shoe or a wristband, and then attaching some mental rehearsal to this to help you reclaim your focus. So in this case, we've got a band, some wristbands that I'm wearing, and what you would do is you would attach a specific phrase or thought to this object, right? So let's say it was ball for life, and for this game, you really wanted to focus on just keeping your head up when you dribble. You would look down at that wristband, and throughout the day, you're thinking, keep my head up, keep my head up, keep my head up, right? So every time you look down at that band, that's what's going to come to mind is what you've been rehearsing, is keep your head up. That'll help you stop overthinking and just focus in the moment. And really, that's what we're talking about here with overthinking, is just being able to refocus, recenter, and play in the moment. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is the relational core. What can you do with your relationships to help you stop overthinking? Typically, the main problem here is that athletes are worried about what other people are going to think if they screw up, right? What's coach going to think? What's my teammates going to think? What are my parents going to think? An easy solution to that is just to check in pre-game and get a very clear sense of what are the expectations, right? Check in with your coach. Say, hey, coach, what are your expectations for me this game? I can guarantee you they're not going to have a laundry list of things. They might have a couple things that they want you to focus on depending on your role on the team. Same thing with your teammates, right? Check in with them, get a sense of, hey guys, what is it that we want to accomplish here today? What are you looking for from me? What do you need me to do? How can I support you? They're going to give you a couple different things, and it's going to help you stay focused in game. You won't have to think about a million different scenarios. You're just going to have to remember, what did coach say? What did my teammates say? Now I can get out there and play focused and play centered. Relational, mental, physical, we've got an exercise for each. last but certainly not least, we're going to look at spiritual. And the spiritual exercise that I like to do with athletes, one of the many, this one's called identity programming. So essentially, you're going to reprogram your identity through audio, and it's going to be your own audio and your own voice. How often do we repeat to ourselves things that we don't want to be true? We know that they're not true, but sometimes we're our own worst enemy, right? We treat ourselves way worse than any teammate or any coach would ever treat us. In this case, you're going to start to reprogram that identity with some audio. You're going to record a voice memo of something that you want to stay focused on for this game. And it could be for this season. It could be something that you do for weeks on end. But let's say you wanted to focus on something specific for this game in order to stay focused. Maybe it's something like, I'm going to play one possession at a time, or keep my feet centered on my jump shot, or like I mentioned before, keep my head up. You're going to record that in your own voice, and then you're going to play it for yourself throughout the day, right? So put on your headphones, and when you are working out, when you are going through your pregame routine, when you are getting to the gym, when you're laying in bed, you can hear that identity reprogramming audio throughout the day, and it will help you refocus, recenter, and recover that identity in terms of who you are and not the negative thoughts that are constantly barraging you throughout the day. Okay, so you've got 4 specific tactics here: pregame routine, anchor your attention, relational check-ins, and then the identity programming. These are 4 exercises that you can try right away that I guarantee you will help you stop overthinking in games. And these are some of the things that we talk about in our breakthrough program. So if you're an athlete, maybe you're even a parent, and you found value in this video, you can take it and apply these things right away, or you can help your athlete apply these things right away. But if you want some help applying these things, and you realize, and of course you realize this because you're an athlete, you have coaches already. You might have multiple coaches: nutrition, skills trainer, AAU coach, maybe even have a mental performance coach right now. Just by me saying that, it helps identify the fact that there isn't an integration between those things. There isn't a roadmap that helps show how all of those things fit together, and it's probably not customized exclusively for you. If you are interested in getting some help and being able to not only integrate all those things, get a defined system and roadmap, but also help put you on the fast track to getting from where you are right now to where you want to get to, click the link down below, fill out the form. There's just a few quick questions we'll ask to kind of get you qualified, understand where you're at, and then you'll get a call, likely with me, not one of our other coaches. You'll get a one-on-one breakthrough call with me, where we'll be able to talk through where you're at currently and whether the Breakthrough Collective might be a good fit for you. So if this was at all helpful and you want some help applying these things into your own training, and you now identified, wow, these 4 cores are something that I completely understand and I know I need to work on them, click the link down below, fill out the form, we will connect, and we will get you inside the Breakthrough Collective and fast track your performance.